No, it's been.
Chair Weiss, we have a quorum.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, members of the MAG Regional Council. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating in the room and via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. This really does make a difference for Andrea as she tries to figure out who's on the call and who's speaking at that time. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you'd like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table in the hallway and give it to MAG staff. Don't forget, if you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available for MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members. Andrea?
Thank you, Chair Weiss and members of the Regional Council. I will go down the list of members alphabetically. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Mayor B.N. Wilner. Vice Mayor Jeff Brown.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. President Burnett.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Carlotte. Ms. Jen Daniels. Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego. Mayor Giles.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Present.
Thank you. President Javier. Mayor Hermosillo.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Governor Roe Lewis. Mr. Meck.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Molina. Mayor Osborne.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega. Mayor Pereira.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Riggs. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schoaf.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Mayor David Smith. Mayor Nancy Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires. Mayor Chair Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, quorum.
Mayor B.N. Wilner's here. Sorry, I was having a hard time joining. Thank you.
Could you repeat your name, please?
Mayor Jerry B.N. Wilner, Town of Paradise Valley. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
Jerry, it's good having you here, sir. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Les Peterson?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
which it stands, one nation,
Honor God. Justice. Thank you, Les. I appreciate that. Our next item is call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for call to the audience agenda items unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Andrea, have we received any cards to speak?
Yes, Chair Weiss, we do have a request to speak card with Ms. Diane Barker.
Thank you, Andrea. Ms. Barker, welcome to the meeting.
There it is. Yeah. Good afternoon, and it sure is a beautiful one. I know coming over here, multimodal. Yes, bicycle, different shoes, and I'll be taking the train and the bus when I go to see my physical therapy doctor. I am very blessed to have good United Healthcare insurance and had a little accident over in Hants Park. And now I'm wondering if there's, because the earth kind of moved and I fell very hard on my rear end. But the doctor took an x-ray and he says it's amazing. It hasn't changed that much in the last 10 years. And he wants me to keep up what I'm doing. So I will. And that's how I'm able to survive, you know, in my senior years is that I do what pretty much what the doctor does say. And if I don't agree, I let them know. So I'm hoping that you'll keep your health up during the holidays too, and we'll be able to get around with the increasing population that's on the roads and the things that are happening in the United States now, even a looming rail strike, which would mean more trucks back with diesels, which means more pollution. And, you know, I am interested in Maricopa County cutting down on their particulate sand pollution. That's one reason why I continue to be multimodal and I continue to come here. As you are now looking, you know, you were hoping that you would be able to pass 2022 annual tax for the Proposition 400. Well, we even wonder what really is going to be confirmed and passed. I mean, you know, it's no joke, even though our politicians tell us everything was run per law. The thing about it is that when you're counting ballots and you're not counting votes that are established from the foundation of an ID, and everybody knows, and the credit card companies known this for years, signatures. The wives forge husband signatures for years now. I mean, you know, women have more credit cards on their own name, but that was an illegal thing. And we've had signatures forged. Signatures are hard to identify. So what I'm just saying is that we need to review what we're doing and make sure that we stand for our country. We're not divided, that our country comes first and truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Also, don't forget that MAG provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website 1 hour prior to the meeting. Andrew, do we have any comments from online?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not received any public comments written online for this or any other agenda item.
Correct. Thank you. Eric, how are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Are you
Mayor.
ready for your update?
I am.
Thank you, sir.
We go to the next slide. So I have 4 things to present to you this morning. First, MAG received for the 24th year in a row the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association. So this is something that we're very proud of. We continue to make our financial reporting even more comprehensive. Go to the next slide. Very proud to announce John Bullen was named as one of Arizona's Capital Times under 40 honorees. So this is given to people who just get the job done. And as you know, John has just done a great job on Momentum 2050, handling the different life cycle programs that we have here at MAG too, and just has been a real force here at MAG. So we're very proud of John's accomplishments and recognition. Go to the next slide. So in October, MAG was present at the Arizona State Fair during the Public Safety Days. We, during these kind of events, we administer a survey for people, their attitudes and perspectives on transportation. And we also focused on secure your load messaging as part of our Don't Trash Arizona program. Go to the next slide. And last thing I want to just let you know that we've revamped our homepage design again to make it more accessible to those who are challenged on the internet. So once again, we think this is a much easier to navigate homepage now too. So Mr. Chair, that completes my report. Thank you very much.
Eric, thank you for that. If anybody has any questions for Eric, please contact him after the meeting. John, congratulations on that award. 40 under 40 is a big deal. So I'm glad you're part of the team. Our next item is approval of the consent agenda, items 5A through 5I, or is that L, Andrea?
5I.
I just want to make sure I didn't extend it too much. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation on any of these items? Andrew, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received one request to speak card for the consent agenda from Ms. Diane Barker.
Ms. Barker?
Thank you again, Chairman Weiss. I want to thank Andrea for making complete minutes. And Dean Giles, I was able to speak on the air quality conformity, and that was his past one. He put that in the minutes, not in these minutes, in the minutes that in his position he needed to field out to the federal and the state entities that are in charge of conformity. And I will be speaking also to make a comment. Dean Giles sent me the exemptions to air quality because, you know, I'm thinking, are these really legitimate exemptions? It seems like everybody should be committing into their own goals in reducing the bad air. But I can see, you know, when it comes to training and grants and some things like that, they should be exempt. The other thing that I think is necessary is there's the emergency truck pull-offs that they build. And that certainly should be exempt too, and something that's very necessary in an area like MAG. Also, I'd like to talk a little bit about uniform standards. And that's item 5D. I believe we're looking really at the rules, and a lot of them have to do with landscaping and irrigation. However, and I've brought this up to the bus operators, I've noticed in Scottsdale that the extension of the platform for the bus doesn't extend so that the driver, and I've talked to drivers, can park so that you can get your bicycle off the front. You can end up in their landscaping in water, weeds, and thorns. So, you know, I'm working on that. I think that through MAG, they should have some type of a specification that would be uniform in our transportation, in our mass transit throughout the valley. And maybe there is. And then, you know, I want to touch on, this is for information, but it has to do with affordable housing in the chairman. And I guess we lost our chairman in Avondale. And they are looking, we do need much more, everybody knows that, affordable housing in Maricopa County. And I hope we'll look at some innovative projects like in Amsterdam, where they took, and we have a surplus of containers now, and build like a whole apartment, a community of this type of housing. Thank you.
Ms. Barker, I'm still here. Thank you for the thoughts, though. I appreciate that. Is there a motion to approve consent items 5A through 5I, please?
This is Les Peterson. I move to approve.
Chip Wilson will second.
I have a motion from Mayor Peterson, a second from Mayor Wilson. Andrea?
Chair Weiss, would you like to do a voice vote in the room?
Please, all those in favor in the room say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Andrew, do you mind doing roll call of the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Bien-Wilner.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. President Burnett.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Show.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chair Wise.
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you, Andrea. Item number 6 is moving forward the work of Pathways Home. Here to present is MAG Regional Homeless Program Manager Katie Gentry, and also to introduce our guest speaker, Rob Podlager. The item is on this agenda item for information and discussion only.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Regional Council for this opportunity to provide an update. I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing me because I come up here way too much. But we've continued to work collaboratively to address homelessness, and we can never have enough attention on this. Next slide, please. The purpose of this presentation is really to offer you all an update on the work that is being done and invite feedback on questions from you all. We will start with an update from Rod Podlager, co-chair of the Continuum of Care Board and the Chief Community Development and Engagement Officer for Valley of the Sun United Way. Next slide.
Katie, I don't think anybody gets tired of hearing you present the information. You're so passionate about it. So thank you for introducing me, and thank you all for having me here today. I do want to give you a brief overview of some of the work that we've been doing at the Continuum of Care. Next slide, please. Over the past few months, MAG has been very busy in working with us in partnership to complete a couple applications. The first was a notice of funding opportunity, which we submitted in late September. Last year, we received $35.7 million for funding of housing, supportive services, and other coordinated entry and HMIS system updates. The second application was a brand new application from FUD, which we were excited to apply for. The application focused on unsheltered population with severe services and needs, and we applied for just under $28 million. We anticipate to hear about that one in early 2023. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the point in time count, which will occur next year on January 24th. Staff is working with the jurisdictions to get and coordinate this planning for the annual count. We do expect to get the results from this in early April. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie because she has all the fun information that gives us the updates on the other work. Katie?
Thanks, Rob.
Next slide, please. So you all have probably seen this a number of times, really detailing each of one of the 14 activities within a Pathways Home. We are excited that we have now turned one of those to green, completing the community court toolkit in September, which I'll touch on in just a second. But the next few slides will really detail each of these key steps and talk to you about next steps. Next slide. A number of the activities are underway, evaluations and mapping specifically, and these really coordinate the work of the Continuum of Care with the work of Pathways Home. As you can see on the slide, we're in the midst of completing 2 evaluations, HMIS and coordinated entry, which are the systems that are required as part of the Continuum of Care. We expect both of these phase 1 of the completion to be in early 2023 in February and March respectively, and then move into phase 2, which would be implementation of both of those evaluations. And then finally, we've completed mapping of all of the outreach teams across the valley, understanding where folks are interacting with each other and also where we have a lack of outreach and need to address more outreach in those areas. And then we're also working through policies and procedures and a landscape map of services to ensure that outreach across the valley looks similar and that folks are getting equal access no matter where they're entering our system. Next slide. As I just mentioned, we've been working through a number of toolkits. We finished the interdepartmental teams toolkit in July and the community court toolkit. There was a series of 2 in September. Those can now be found on our website and have been sent out to all of your staff for use. And we're still working on a number of other toolkits, including how to engage faith networks, affordable housing development, and the public education campaign. Next slide. And then finally, I wanted to touch on how we are doing coordination activities. We've been in the process of developing a funding filter, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. Threshold is continuing to engage and expand services across the valley to bring more landlords into our system. And then finally, we were working with Home Matters to Arizona and partners to create an integrated regional public education campaign, which you'll hear about on the next agenda item. But we're really excited to announce another contribution that has been made to that public education campaign, and we're still working through gathering additional funding to make that the most effective campaign possible. Next slide. So I wanted to briefly touch on House America and the work before I dive into housing targets. We're currently 80% of the way through the challenge, which ends in December, at the end of December. We've rehoused 76% of our goal and added 66% to the development pipeline as of the end of September. So we have a big push to go before the end of the year, but I do anticipate that we will hit both of those numbers and are really working with nonprofits in order to accomplish those goals. So next slide, I wanted to briefly dive into the housing targets and give you a little bit of a refresher and background as to how we got where we are now. We had an initial projection to reduce homelessness by 25%. And because of the numbers that we initially calculated, we identified temporary housing targets at 770 and permanent housing targets at 1,225. But a lot has changed in a year. COVID also made a huge impact on these numbers, and we've seen increasing homelessness. We've had more increasing units than ever before that are already in use since our 2020 PIT count, which is when we calculated these numbers from. And then we've had a lot of temporary funding in response to COVID. So I want to make sure I touch on all of those. Next slide, please. So diving first into temporary housing targets, since our January 2020 PIT count, we've added 1,154 additional units, and we have an additional 556 that are committed to open before 2027 when our Pathways Home plan is scheduled for. Of these, 1,525 are COVID funded currently, so either the capital expenses of purchasing those or the ongoing operations of those have opened in response, which has dramatically increased our availability of temporary housing. But also we are concerned about ongoing operating costs of those after our CARES and ARPA money is finished in 2024 through 2026. So we're in conversations with a lot of your staff about what does this look like on an ongoing basis. But when I jump into permanent housing, and then I'll dive a little bit further into both of these. On the permanent housing side, we have a similar story. We've used 1,010 units through the end of September that were committed by jurisdictions. We have an additional 1,579 households that have been committed, but not yet had folks move into those units. So we are in the process of leasing those up, but not yet having folks in their apartment signed. Again, the majority of these are COVID funded, with 91% being funded either by CARES, ARPA, or emergency housing vouchers. So that means that a lot of our folks are not necessarily long-term funded, but rather short-term funded. So I'm going to move into some key questions. If you go to the next slide, of how do we address these increasing homeless numbers? What is the source of ongoing funding for program sustainability, specifically after our COVID funding expires? What is our source of operational funds as we continue to move down this route? And then how do we address these increasing housing costs? I know Annabelle, my colleague, has mentioned that we've had such an increase in housing costs. And so how do we start to combat some of those rising rents? And so after reviewing these initial numbers, the local jurisdiction committee did recommend staying at that 25% reduction, even though we've kind of seen that. And we're looking at coming back to you in February to really discuss what would be the needed added commitment just to sustain the numbers that we have right now in that 25%. So with that, I'm going to move to the next slide. Next slide. As I just mentioned, we don't want to lose momentum. And so we are going to come to you in February to really look at what does it look like to continue to revise and adapt this plan as we move forward. As I just mentioned, we have some of these changing factors that are happening in our homeless response system, specifically due to COVID. And so we will be looking at what does a phase 2 look like, or a phase 2 of certain steps, especially as we start to accomplish some of these steps and continuing to keep up the momentum through 2027 to really address homelessness. Next slide. We have a number of upcoming meetings. We will really be working through that kind of next step in those phases in our local jurisdiction committee, and I've already started those conversations, but we'll continue them in on December 15th. If any of you or your staff are interested in attending, please reach out to me, and we're happy to send any invites your way. We also have a full list of all of our calendar meetings on our website that you all are more than welcome to attend. Next slide. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Weiss. If you have any questions or thoughts, happy to answer them.
Okay, no, I'm just always amazed at your energy and your passion, and Rob is right. So any questions from the committee? Let's start with the room first, and then let's go virtual if we can, Andrea.
Mayor Weiss, this is Mayor Giles. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Katie and Rob. Thank you for the amazing efforts you're doing. The fact that we're spending and managing well tens of millions of dollars through your efforts is very impressive and much appreciated. And Katie, I'll join Rob in saying, please don't apologize for we need to MAG needs to be the quarterback of homelessness in our valley. So we need to this needs to be a regular agenda item. So much like transportation. So thank you. I appreciate and endorse the idea that let's do this incrementally. The 25% reduction is a very aspirational goal. So no reason to, run faster than we can. But with the increasing rate of homelessness, does that impact the initial numbers that we were talking about? I mean, does it to have a 25% reduction, does that mean we need to up the units that we're looking for?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Mayor Weiss and Mayor Giles, I think that that's why we moved to a quarterly update, is to be less reactive and more proactive to the numbers. And we're seeing more people come in the front door. And so we need to get people out the back door faster, right? We need to have people go through our system faster. And one of the conversations that we are having is, how do we stop the inflow of folks coming in and address their needs while also addressing the folks that are currently experiencing homelessness? And so our current numbers are not, because we've stood up so much during COVID and not only created more temporary housing and more permanent housing solutions. At this point, we're not actually seeing our numbers increase. We're still at that kind of same targeted numbers, but something we are keeping an eye on. And to that degree, we've had a bunch of COVID money to be able to stand up these resources so quickly. And so what does that look like on a long-term basis? What is going to be the ongoing funding that we're going to need to be able to not only operate those temporary shelters that we created during COVID? We stood up an additional 1,500 shelter beds, but then also, how do we move those folks back into housing and keep that housing steady, and not just have this influx now, but then we have a huge kind of downfall in 2024 when we hit that funding cliff.
Okay, great. Well, I'm really looking forward to the February meeting and getting a more robust report on that. And I think we all need to be uncomfortable with this obvious cliff that we're going to experience when the ARPA and CARES Act money expires, and how we're going to figure out how to make up that shortfall. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Mayor Giles. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online? Katie, Rob, thank you for that. That was great.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is marketing strategy for the Affordable Housing Public Education Campaign. This will be presented by MAG Communication Director Kelly Taft and guest speaker Catherine Alonzo, CEO of Javelina. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Kelly?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council. We are pleased to be able to provide an update to you on the progress to implement a regional homelessness public education campaign as part of the action plan for Pathways Home. The goal of the campaign is to raise awareness about the need for affordable rents and mortgages in our region as well as the state. The campaign intends to use an approach that can be scalable and adaptable for each agency based on their specific needs. As noted in our April update, MAG is leveraging a partnership opportunity with Home Matters to Arizona and the marketing firm Javelina to align our efforts and integrate resources. Together with MAG and other core team members, these groups have been leading the strategic marketing efforts to build the foundation of the campaign and create a messaging framework and communication toolkit. The marketing strategy you're about to hear more about today was based on extensive research and engagement We've sought input from our member agencies at every step, using their feedback to help shape the strategy. This includes a core support team, communication collaborative, local jurisdiction committee, as well as the Regional Homelessness Public Education Campaign Working Group, which is made up of communication representatives, PIOs, and intergovernmental representatives from your agencies. We've held a number of listening sessions, as well as a public input session regarding the naming of the campaign. And we are currently reviewing some legal options and trademark issues involved with those names. We want to make sure that this campaign meets your needs. So we are really encouraging you to provide all the feedback you can. We want to make sure that the campaign will be useful to you. So any feedback and questions we are happy to take at the end of the presentation. With that, I would like to introduce Catherine Alonso, who is the CEO of Javelina.
Hi, thank you so much, Chair and Ms. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me here today. Before I start, excuse me, I'm just going to tell you one thing about myself, and that is that I'm originally from the UK, and I share that so you just don't spend the next few minutes wondering what part of Australia I'm from. And I'm really, it's my honor and privilege to do this work and to get to share this with you today. Next slide, please. So the campaign will have three primary objectives. The first one is really to transform the predominant narrative that exists around affordable housing and housing in our communities. We really want to focus on meeting community need in a way that enables collaboration and consensus building, rather than really what we see today, which is a very divisive conversation around affordable housing. The second objective, closely related to that, is creating a network of supporters for a new vision for affordable housing in our communities. And then the third objective is to make housing a reality for more Arizonans. And this is really the guiding light. We really are looking at moving the needle on the number of people that have housing in our communities. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did for this is develop a messaging foundation, and I'm pleased to share this with you now. Next slide. And the way to think about this messaging foundation is it's kind of the core ingredients of the story that we'll be telling through this campaign. And this that you see here is represents really the purpose and the guiding vision behind the campaign. We are building a future where every Arizonan has a place to be at home, empowering them to live stable and purposeful lives. To get there, we are inspiring Arizonans to be champions for communities where everyone has a home that meets their needs. So the best way to think about this purpose statement is it really is the guiding messaging framework behind the campaign. It's akin to sort of the purpose statement or the vision statement that an organization might have, and will be the foundation of the messaging that we see in the ads and on the website and in the campaign materials that we develop. I don't anticipate that this specific purpose statement would be what we would see written in ads. Next slide, please. So how are we going to achieve that vision? We offer key decision makers resources and support so that they can overcome obstacles to housing, ensuring everyone can be at home in the communities they lead. This includes shaping and sharing the narrative to create new perspectives, educating on the value and impact of attainable homes, and providing information and data on policies that put homes within reach for every member of their communities. Next slide. In doing so, we serve Arizonans experiencing barriers to find a suitable home in their community. So this statement really represents who the principal beneficiary is of the campaign. And those are Arizonans experiencing barriers to finding a suitable home in their community. And we know that that is very broad. It's kind of intentionally broad and is representative of the spectrum of housing insecurity that we know exists at the moment. Next slide. So alternatives to this phrase affordable housing. Ultimately, what our goal is with this campaign, this public education campaign, is to change the conversation around affordable housing. And we know that this phrase is limiting at the moment because it has become associated with a type of housing rather than being really directly associated with this concept of affordability. So we know that to build a campaign that is going to be effective, move the needle, and help us move our goals, meet our goals, that we need to use different words. So what are our alternatives to affordable housing, and what are those words going to be? One thing I'll share before I move into sharing these these alternatives is that we realized pretty quickly that there isn't a magical alternative phrase to affordable housing that will meet all of our goals. And so what we want to do is use several different ways of communicating the same idea. Next slide. So the first one is a home that fits our needs or a home that fits your needs. An example of how this might be used in a sentence: we believe every Arizonan needs a home that fits their needs. And this really is talking about not only affordability, but also the kind of the type of home you need. Is it the size that you need? Is it within range of the amenities that you need? We know that our housing challenges and our housing shortages aren't just limited to affordability and is also about meeting the other kinds of needs that a family has. Next slide, please. The second one is at home in Arizona. An example: we believe every Arizonan should be at home in Arizona. And this is really an evocative phrase that is designed to connect with our audiences on an emotional level and really drive home that idea of feeling at home in a place that I think is something that we can all relate to. Next slide, please. This one is affordable rents and mortgages. So an example: we believe every Arizonan needs an affordable rent or mortgage payment. This is very intentionally pretty specific and almost clinical. We know that this phrase, as I mentioned, affordable housing, has become related to a type of housing rather than really associated with the concept of affordability. And so using this phrase, affordable rents and mortgages, to mean quite literally a payment that you have enough money to make is something that we can all relate to and is something that is prevalent in all of our daily lives. And then the last one, a home within reach. We believe in putting homes within reach of every Arizonan. And this is an alternative to the idea of attainable housing, the idea that we really believe that everybody should be able to access a home and have a home within reach. Next slide, please. So having shared some of the language and the messaging, I want to pivot into what are the strategies and the tactics that we'll be utilizing in these campaigns to share these ideas with our target audiences. Next slide. So who are our target audiences? Initially, they are really the people that are leading our communities. So elected officials, developers, likely voters, those that are very engaged in our communities, and HOAs and similar groups. We believe that these are our initial target audiences to help us move the needle. Next slide. And so we'll be reaching them in a range of ways. The initial strategy is really around collaborating and fostering collaboration with our stakeholders. So this is to say the many organizations that are already involved in this space and doing fantastic work in this space so that we can really provide them with materials so that they can reach their audiences. We really are, it's very, very important to us that we're building on top of existing efforts and not duplicating. And so to do that, what we'll be doing is developing and sharing a toolkit of materials with these stakeholders so that they can build different levels of engagement with their audiences. Next slide, please. The second strategy is to tell the very real human stories of this issue. And what we really will be focusing on doing is capturing the real stories that bring this campaign messages that I've shared in black and white text, bringing those to life, making sure that we're not only capturing those stories in words, but in photos and videos. And the other thing that's notable here is to talk about the type of stories that we will be telling. Remembering that our driving mission here is narrative change. We are going to be focused on telling stories of how ensuring that every Arizonan has a home within reach is working, and what the success stories of those approaches and how it's changing the face of communities. Next slide, please. And then the final strategy is to expand the campaign messages and presence. So the way to think of this is really how are we broadly communicating these messages. So that will, of course, include developing a website, launching not only an earned media effort, but also a paid media effort through digital ads and other methods. Thank you. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Just want to say thank you, Catherine and Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We really are eager to hear your feedback and your continued feedback as we continue to refine the campaign. So we also are hoping to be able to invite you soon to a public session regarding the visual identity and logo development. As soon as we get the kind of name cleared through our legal review process, and we will bring some of those forward to you for your input. And with that, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, both of you. Are there any members of the committee who have questions? Let's start in the room first. Anyone online?
Mr. Chairman, this is Les Peterson. If I could ask a couple questions, please, or
Yes, sir.
to what was an excellent presentation. As I look at it, if we were in my municipality going to move forward on addressing and solving this, you know, the things that I might ask of our planning and zoning and the town council would be changes in zoning, because affordable housing simply isn't available within our existing zoning. So we would have to set aside a percentage, or we'd have to somehow resolve where and how many of these we wanted. And then we would have to do some kind of an economic presentation for developers, because they're going to look and say, if I bought this 20 acres or 200 acres, if it were available, how much money can I make doing affordable housing versus other alternatives? So we'd have to have some pretty knowledgeable and sophisticated financial analyses. At least that's a reaction. I think what you have here is an excellent one, excellent overlay to it. And then we would have to sell those people who live around this area that it's not going to be derogatory in any manner to their living situation, because I suspect we're going to get some pushback there. That's just my reaction to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson and Mr. Chair, members of the council. We do really feel very strongly that data is going to be a very, very important part of this campaign and this effort. And we really do want to lead with data. So in any way that MAG can support you with those facts and figures and those economic numbers, we can definitely work with your communities to get you the information that you need to make that case.
Through the chair,
Les.
Mayor Hartke.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, Catherine, good to see you. Go Flynn Brown. I would like to just commend you on, you're right, affordable housing has taken on a meaning different than just supplying households, and trying to address that different ways, I think is smart. There's always a debate in our community, what does that mean, and what kind of affordable housing? And I don't think we need at this level to get into going any deeper in that, but I just wanted to say appreciate the trying to redefine that in a way that more people can relate to and how it gets to them. I also think the real stories are, as you also pick up, is probably going to be central to this. There's nothing like a compelling story that's going to do anything better. My one question on your bullet points, number 2, to me, that almost seems like that might mean a little more definition. It beyond the need, it almost equity is hard for me to understand it depending on who's using the word, and it almost seems a word of equity rather than a word of housing need. And it's not a bad presentation or a bad word, but depending on who I talk to, I don't know what they mean. So that was the one that left me a little wanting to know more clarity and definition. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Can we go back to that slide?
No, not.
Thank you.
It was the 4 bullet points. Close back to. What?
There you go.
I think it was maybe the way you were, maybe it was this, but maybe it was just your definition of this doesn't look like the one I'm talking about. Maybe it was, go to number 3, please. No.
The affordable housing.
All right, I think I'm not defining where the comment struck me, and maybe it was just the way that you described it, Catherine. So clearly it isn't number 2 or number 3 here. So
Why, Mayor Hartgate, thank you for your comments, and we'll certainly take those aboard as we develop the full messaging.
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone online?
Chair Weiss, this is Jen Daniels. I just have one request. There are a variety of programs that participate in what we have deemed sort of the overall bucket of affordable housing. And I think it would be very helpful for there to be maybe a one pager on the different types and programs, how they are funded, how the developer still continues to make money. Obviously, they're in this to make money as well. How cities and towns and the county often partner with these developers in order to have affordable housing within their communities. But I think there needs to be specifically some clarity around the different types of programs and the populations that those programs are designed to reach. Because I think there is a lot of confusion in the space, and people are using a lot of this terminology interchangeably. And it causes a lot of confusion, I think, in the marketplace and also amongst residents who may not have access to all of the resources that we're privy to here. So I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? I would tell you that my takeaway from this is there's 2 parts of my comments. One is that I think again, I understand the need for a very broad statement about making sure that every Arizonan who wants a home can afford the rent or the mortgage. But again, that kind of harkens back to me when I look at the housing crisis of 2007 and 8, when the government tried to make sure that everyone qualified for housing and it blew up. So I want to make sure that as we go forward, and I understand that you're not talking about the same thing, but I just want to make sure, because people are going to look at that and say, well, haven't we already tried that? I also think that when you develop marketing plans and strategic plans for individual or for cities, there are cities that have that are much different than one another. I can look at Les's city and Avondale, and it's 2 completely different cities just because of the amount of available space, the demographics that live there, and the ability to develop affordable housing, what I call workforce housing, in a blank canvas type of area like the Boulevard, where it fits in because there's 2,000 other apartment units going in. Not every city has that ability. I also think we need to look at cities that have had a lot of success when it comes to workforce housing. And I'm looking at Tempe, and look at Mesa and Phoenix. And I think, what can we learn from those type of developments, and how have they matured over the decades that they were put in, and what do they look like today? So I think all that information would be helpful to cities, especially cities that have a lot of growth potential and want to bring these types of housing opportunities to the residents, but sometimes run into roadblocks. Thanks, everyone. Item number 8 is the 2022 annual report on the status of the implementation of Proposition 400. Here to present is MAG Transportation Analyst Steph Stearns. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion only.
Good afternoon, Chair Weiss, members of the committee. Pleased to be here with you this afternoon to present for information and discussion. Next slide, please. The annual report of Prop 400 is a requirement by state statute. It takes a look at the program according to the 3 modal life cycle programs: freeway, arterial, and transit. And it addresses project status, financing, and the outlook for implementation. I'll pause here just for a moment. Those who are in the room today, you have a copy of the report at your place. There was also a copy in your agenda packet. And if anyone needs additional copies, please let me know. I would be happy to arrange delivery, as well as for those who are on the phone today. Next slide, please. Thank you. Getting right into our revenue projections, starting with the half-cent sales tax. The future half-cent sales tax revenues for the remainder of the program are forecasted to come in at approximately $2.5 billion. This is 17% higher than what was forecasted in the 2021 report, and this is due to strong growth in the retail sector. Next slide, please. Moving on to federal funds, Our future federal fund revenues are projected at $1.1 billion. I will note that this light blue here in the pie chart, a significant portion of our transit funding for the region does come from competitive and discretionary grant programs. Our partners at Valley Metro and City of Phoenix have been very successful in getting these funds awarded over the past few years. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Freeway Lifecycle Program. In 2022, a total of 3 projects were completed with 7 underway. I will also note that this report represents a snapshot in time as of July 1 of 2022. So as we stand here today, end of November, we know that SR 24 is open. We know that 202 Lindsay is open, but as of July 1st, 2022, when this report was published, it was still under construction. So that's why it is shown underway. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Arterial Lifecycle Program, we had a number of projects completed and underway. A few of them are highlighted on the screen. This top photo is showing Northern Parkway, Dysart, and El Mirage Road overpasses. And then shown here on the bottom, this is the intersection of Southern Avenue and Stapley Drive in Mesa. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Transit Lifecycle Program, it's split in between the bus and the rail side. On the bus side, we saw implementation of a new route that was Route 515, the Fountain Hills Mesa Connector. And 135 vehicles were programmed for purchase. This includes both expansion and replacement fleet vehicles, anything from a standard 40-foot bus all the way down to a small paratransit van. On the rail side, we saw the completion of the Tempe streetcar earlier this May, and the South Central Extension and Northwest Extension Phase 2 were both actively under construction. Finally, the Capital Extension was in the planning phases. Next slide, please. So turning your attention to what Prop 400 has accomplished as a whole, this region has seen 410 corridor miles of freeway highway projects, 252 corridor miles of arterial projects, and 7.6 million bus transit revenue miles in 2022 alone. So you can expand that many times over to get an idea of what the program has accomplished. Next slide, please. Looking forward, MAG will continue to review program cost estimates, adjust the program as necessary, and we are to this day working to identify a path to the ballot and the next steps for Proposition 400. Next slide, please. Chair Weiss, members of the committee, that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. This is the second time I've seen this, obviously with TPC, and it's incredibly impressive. Just the amount of detail that's in there. And I think it's a valuable tool as we go back to our cities, go back to our councils, and go back to the public, and they ask, what am I getting for my tax dollars? And this is pretty thorough description of what they're getting. Any comments from people in the room? Anyone online? Thank you, Steph. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nathan, legislative update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. There was an election just the other week. So hopefully you've all maintained your wits and have gotten through it. Some of the transition obviously continues. I'll get to that in a moment. But first, of course, there were congressional races. We're looking forward to working with the new Congress in 2023. We've been working on refreshing our portfolio of MAG federal issue papers for our upcoming congressional meetings with Arizona offices. We'll share those issue papers with member agencies with complete. We're imagining that will probably be next month, January timeframe. Looking to work with our national associations on conferences in the new year, including in January, and doing some visits on the Hill at that time. So we'll have that refreshed portfolio for you next month. Turning to state, of course, we have a new governor-elect in Katie Hobbs, and in our legislature, seeing the leadership forming with Senator Peterson as president, looking at the new chair, Senator Farnsworth, chairing Transportation and Technology. On the House side, the chairs for committees is still emerging. We are, of course, seeing Representative Toma emerge as the speaker. So clearly, Prop 400 extension is top of mind. We're continuing our ongoing conversations with current executive and legislative leadership for near-term special session opportunity. We'll update member agencies on those developments. but would like to recognize that the business community does continue their outreach. That is an ongoing effort. We like to thank the business community for their work. Beyond that, of course, we're attentive to the dynamics of the governor-elect and incoming legislative leadership. We'll share the importance of transportation investment in our region with the incoming leadership and offices, of course, emphasizing economic opportunities, air quality impacts, and mobility if we're unable to extend our half-cent sales tax in our region for transportation. I do want to touch on a Pinal County transportation issue. We did see Prop 469, proposed half-cent sales tax for transportation, fail at the polls. Of course, portions of Pinal County are in the MAG planning area, with those 6-member agencies, of course, being Apache Junction, Queen Creek, Gila River Indian Community, City of Maricopa, Florence, and Pinal. We'll continue discussions with our Pinal members as to the impacts on our regional transportation system and where this goes from here. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's a quick overview. Continue our conversations with, again, existing administration, legislative leadership, but also gearing up for the new governor-elect and leadership in our legislature. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to take any questions.
Nathan, thank you for that. Are there any questions for Nathan from the committee? Mayor Giles, do you have any insight into the governor-elect? I know you're helping with some of the transition. Any thoughts?
Well, yes, let me just offer up to everyone that there is a transition team that's helping to create a list of 3 or 4 candidates for the governor to select from for department heads. So I am privileged to serve on that. So I would welcome your input if you have suggestions on any state departments. The governor's intention is to start, with a clean slate, and that doesn't mean everyone gets fired. That means some people, but everyone, is up for either being reappointed or not. So if you I'd love to carry the water of MAG and cities and towns to make sure that we have a good relationship and we have people in places that maybe we haven't had great relationships with in the past, and that this is an opportunity to improve that. So please send me your any suggestions you have, and I'll be happy to advocate for those at the transition team.
John, thank you for that. I appreciate all your hard work on that.
Mr. Chair, this is Mayor Nancy Smith from the City of Maricopa.
Yes, Mayor.
Hi, I just wanted to really tout how proud I am of the City of Maricopa for Prop 469. We were sad to see it go down. However, the City of Maricopa had a supermajority approval of Prop 469 at about 63%. So I'm very proud of them, but I also look forward to working with MAG and the state for any solutions we can come up with for State Route 347 primarily. Thank you.
Nancy, for your insight on this, what do you think has to change for it to pass Pinal County in the future?
Yeah, I think that the communities, the communities that where it didn't pass felt as though they weren't getting anything in the deal. And so we talked about this yesterday at a meeting, and basically feel like it needs to be revamped so that we're sure all cities and areas are receiving something, although we felt like it was fairly shared across the county. There were some areas that didn't feel the same, and so it failed there. Amazingly, it passed, I think, with a pretty close supermajority down at Saddleback. And so we were really excited that that happened. So they understand the importance of transportation in Pinal County, but it's just a matter of looking at the areas and making sure everybody feels like it's equitable.
Thank you. And the reason I asked that question is I want to make sure we can, while it's sad that it didn't pass, eventually Prop 400E is going to go to the voters, and we need to make sure that we learn the lessons from propositions that did not pass and those that did pass. So I appreciate your insight on that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
This is Chip Wilson from Apache Junction.
Yes, Mayor.
I'd like to answer that question a little bit from our side of the Pinal County. In the city itself, it went, it did pass, but barely. But in the areas around Apache Junction, did not. In fact, they had a very active group out there petitioning against it. And it was all because they felt that they were left out. And that's where we were trying to tell them that it would be included. And, but that did not work. And that's the unfortunate thing, is there was a lot of areas that felt that they were entirely left out, and they overwhelmingly voted against it.
Chip, thank you for that. And again, I think that's important for us to learn that lesson as we go forward. It's one thing getting it through the governor or the legislature, but in the end, it's the voters that have to vote for this. So I'd love to talk with you guys more about that and have kind of the dissection of the election happen in the future as we get closer to putting it on the ballot for voters and for Prop 400. So thank you both.
Mayor?
Yes.
Jeff Brown in Queen Creek. Just a quick note of concern from town of Queen Creek. We had within our communities in the town, likewise, we passed it. There were some areas in Santan Valley around us that passed it less so this time than last time. Some of the areas around us in Santan Valley were in the 57% range, but it was much higher originally in 2017. We're slated to lose $65 million for State Route 24 due to the failure of Prop 469. So it's extremely problematic from a rapidly growing or a quickly growing community perspective. One of the things I think we missed, at least in Pinal County, was that a very popular sheriff, Lamb, in our instance, backed this thing. And I don't know that we utilized that endorsement to the extent that it otherwise could have been. So having proponents on board is always a good thing, but better so, I think, when you actually advertise the fact that you have those proponents.
I always watch Fridays with Frank on YouTube, which is a sheriff from Pinal County, and Sheriff Lamb will ride along with him. If you haven't seen Fridays with Frank, Google it on YouTube and watch it. It's pretty entertaining. Eric and Nathan, can we look at this sometime in the future, kind of as we're able to dissect the Pinal County voting results and utilize the knowledge of our mayors that sit on MAG, but also are part of Pinal County, just as a way to have that discussion for an upcoming, and it doesn't have to be in the next couple of months, but as we get closer to Prop 400 going to the voters, could we do something with that?
We certainly can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any items for future agenda? Any comments from the committee? Before we adjourn, there are 4 committee members who are leaving, and I just want to take a moment and thank them for their service. This is happening in no particular order. The first is Mayor Carlett from Peoria. I want to thank her for her service, not only to the city of Peoria, but the MAG Regional Council and the entire region for the past 7 years. Kathy has been a steadfast proponent of the importance of transportation infrastructure and its impact on economic prosperity. She has led her city and the county through unprecedented growth, focusing on connectivity and mobility. Thank you, Kathy. We look forward to working with you sometime in the future. I've pressed Kathy I don't think she's on the call, but to run for governor sometime in the future, and she has flatly said no, but maybe we can change her mind. I also want to recognize Les from Carefree. Your leadership on this committee, your voice on this committee has been a strong one, and has been one that helps those who don't think the same way that you do kind of come around and help us look at things from a different perspective. He has led the city of Carefree with priorities that include an emphasis on transportation infrastructure and applying his marketing and economic development and business background to serve both the city as well as the region. Les, thank you for your service and dedication and passion to this committee. You will be missed, my friend. Vice Mayor Jeff Brown from Queen Creek. Jeff, we just want to recognize you for your tireless efforts to bring the town of Queen Creek to prosperity following the sad death of Mayor Barney. Vice Mayor Brown was appointed to serve on the MAG Regional Council. Thank you, Jeff, for your continued commitment to the values and mission of MAG and the entire Maricopa region. And last but not least is Vice Mayor David Smith from Cave Creek. David, your participation in MAG has really helped this committee move forward. You've been an active member serving the region since 2017. Thank you for the past 6 years, bringing your desire, your knowledge, and your expertise to improving the community and the region as a whole, especially on homelessness, infrastructure needs, and water issues. So if we could do a round of applause for these 4 people, that would be awesome. That being said, the next meeting of the Regional Council will be on Wednesday, January 25th at 11:30 a.m. With no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.